never forget the weight of that first leather jacket draped over your shoulders, not the wool against your neck, nor the sudden terrifying responsibility it carried. Like wearing your heart, not on your sleeve, but emblazoned across your back for the whole town to see. Back then, before swipe right and ghosting, before the whole world lived in your pocket, romance had a different rhythm, a language all its own, spoken in glances across a crowded gymnasium, in the careful folding of a note passed in algebra class, in the silent, sacred meaning behind a simple class ring. It was a world governed by unwritten rules, stricter than any principal's decree, understood by every teenager in Elmwood, population 3,217. Rules our grandkids listen to now, wide-eyed, like we're describing life on the moon. You needed chaperone just to share a milkshake, Grandpa. Oh, darling, it was more complicated and somehow simpler than that. My name is Walter. Grew up right here, though the elms were taller then, and Doc Henderson still made house calls. My world revolved around three things: Friday night football under those blinding lights, Saturdays at Benny's Pinball Palace trying to beat Tommy Russo's high score, and, well, the third thing was Mary Margaret O'Shea. Hair like spun autumn gold, eyes the color of the creek in July, and a laugh that could make the soda jerk at Miller's drugstore drop a scoop of ice cream. But talking to Mary Margaret? That wasn't like tackling a halfback or conquering a pinball machine. That required navigating a labyrinth of unspoken laws. Rule number one, the approach. You couldn't just amble up, not if you were serious. There was a choreography to it. You needed an in, a shared class project, a mutual friend to vouch for you, a reason to be standing near her locker that didn't scream desperate. I spent 3 weeks accidentally dropping my history text near her homeroom door before she finally picked it up and said, "Walter Jenkins, if you're this clumsy with books, how do you ever catch a football?" My tongue felt like it was wearing one of those leather jackets, too big and heavy. Rule number two, the chaperone. Oh, the chaperone. Your shadow, your judge, your constant reminder that privacy was a luxury reserved for, well, we weren't quite sure. Married folks, maybe? Mrs. Gable, the librarian, was Mary Margaret's usual guardian on these early dates, which usually meant sharing a booth at Miller's, a nickel Coke each, and conversation filtered through the steady click-clack of Mrs. Gable's knitting needles. You learned to speak in code. "The weather's sure been fine," meant, "I think you're swell." "Did you finish the algebra?" meant, "Can I walk you home?" Mrs. Gable's hawk eyes missed nothing, but her presence, it forced a different kind of closeness. You learned to listen, really listen, to the tone beneath the words. You learned patience, waiting for that moment when Mrs. Gable got deeply engrossed in her pearl stitch, and you could risk passing a note folded smaller than a postage stamp under the counter. Rule number three, the note. Not a text, not a DM. A note. Penmanship mattered. Folding was an art form, intricate triangles or secret pockets. Delivery was a high-stakes operation involving locker combinations, trusted friends who demanded payment in jawbreakers or comic books, and timing worthy of a bank heist. That little square of paper held more weight than a telegram. It carried hope, vulnerability, the terrifying possibility of no. Rule number four, the walk home. This was prime territory. No chaperone needed, just daylight and the open street. But distance was regulated. Too close invited gossip, and the wrath of fathers. Too far signaled disinterest. You navigated cracks in the sidewalk like minefields. Conversation flowed easier here, away from prying ears. You talked about dreams, college, maybe? A job at the new factory, the latest Elvis single. You learned about her family, her worries about her kid brother, her secret love for strawberry malts, even though cherry cokes were her thing. You learned the map of her world, one careful step and shared silence at a time. Walking Mary Margaret home became my favorite part of the day. 7 blocks of pure, uncomplicated possibility. Rule number 5. Public displays. Holding hands. Only after significant milestones, and even then, maybe just for a moment crossing a busy street. A kiss? Goodness, that was Mount Everest territory, reserved for porches after formal dates, witnessed only by fireflies and maybe the neighbor's cat. Your affection was measured in glances held a beat too long, in the brush of a hand, passing a popcorn box at the Saturday matinee, and saving the last bite of your pie for her at the diner. It wasn't restraint for restraint's sake. It was anticipation, making the small things matter, making a touch truly mean something. Places like Benny's Pinball Palace were neutral ground. You could challenge her to a game. Letting her win was an art form. Share a bag of peanuts, bask in the noisy, chaotic glow. It was where you were seen together, where Tommy Russo's smirk couldn't touch the little bubble you were building. Rule number 6. The family. This wasn't just dating Mary Margaret. This was courting the O'Sheas. Her father, Patrick, was a foreman at the plant, a man whose handshake could crack walnuts and whose gaze could freeze soda pop. Meeting him officially to ask permission to take Mary Margaret to the homecoming dance was more terrifying than any fourth down play. You wore your Sunday best. You looked him in the eye, mostly. You said, "Sir," a lot. You brought a small, respectable gift for Mrs. O'Shea, maybe a box of chocolates from Miller's finest selection. His slow nod of approval felt like winning the state championship. It taught you respect. It taught you that loving someone meant respecting where they came from, the people who shaped them. Rule number 7. The dance, the pinnacle. Weeks of planning, saving allowance for the corsage, gardenias, always gardenias for Mary Margaret, practicing your steps in the garage so you wouldn't crush your toes. The gym transformed into a galaxy of twinkle lights and hope. The rules were suspended, slightly, within the music. Holding her during a slow dance. That was the closest to heaven a 17-year-old boy from Elmwood could get. Her head resting lightly on your shoulder, the scent of her hairspray and gardenias, the shared warmth despite the careful space between you. The chaperones were still there, eagle-eyed, but their presence faded under the spell of the music and the gentle pressure of her hand in yours. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the shared breath, the synchronized sway, the unspoken promise in that dim, magical light. You learned the power of presence, of truly being there in that moment with her, and then the ultimate commitment. Rule number 8. Going steady. This wasn't just seeing each other. It was a public declaration, a solemn pact, signified by the ring set. Not an engagement ring, mind you. A simpler band, often worn on the left ring finger, a silent signal to the world. Taken, spoken for, off the market. Giving Mary Margaret that little silver band with the chip of blue glass felt more significant than any contract I'd sign later in life. It meant exclusivity, It meant defending her honor if some wise guy like Tommy Russo made a crack. It meant saving your earnings, not just for pinball, but maybe for a real date at the fancy steakhouse 2 towns over. It meant you wore her ring, too, often a class ring wrapped with yarn so it fit. That weight on your finger was a constant reminder, a responsibility, a promise to be worthy. Going steady taught you fidelity before you even fully understood the word. It taught you that commitment wasn't a cage. It was the ground beneath your feet, solid and sure. Rule number 9, the good night. The porch light was the ultimate timekeeper. Mr. O'Shea's shadow often lingered behind the curtain. The good night was a ritual, a thank you for the evening, a lingering handshake that maybe, if the stars aligned and the chaperone was momentarily distracted, could become a swift, breathtaking kiss on the cheek. The electric jolt of that innocent touch could power the streetlights. You learned the sweetness of anticipation, the value of the unspoken until next time. You learned that restraint could make the smallest touch unforgettable. It wasn't all gardenias and pinball glory, of course. We had our storms. Rule number 10, perhaps the most important: respect and repair. A misunderstanding over a missed note. Jealousy flaring over a harmless dance with Tommy Russo at a party. Though I maintain he was holding her a little too close. Harsh words spoken in the heat of teenage hurt. The rules didn't vanish then. They shifted. You didn't ghost. You didn't post cryptic messages. You faced it. You showed up. On her porch, in the rain, if necessary. You looked her in the eye. You apologized if you were wrong. You listened if she was hurt. You learned the hard, necessary art of saying, "I'm sorry," and meaning it. You learned that love wasn't just the easy dances. It was weathering the downpours together, finding shelter under the same awning, figuring out how to mend the tear you'd made in the fabric you were weaving together. Respect wasn't just for her father. It was for her feelings, her dignity, even when you disagreed. That lesson, learned on a rain-lashed porch with a heart full of regret, that's the one that lasts a lifetime. Looking back now through the lens of all these years, those rules, so baffling to kids today, with their phones and their freedom, they weren't about restriction. Not really. They were about building something. Brick by careful brick, glance by shared glance, note by folded note. They were about patience, about earning trust, step by cautious step, about showing respect to her family, to yourself. They forced us to talk, to listen, to truly see the person beside us, not just swipe to the next possibility. They taught us that love wasn't just a feeling that hit you like a rogue pinball. It was a choice you made, day after day, in the little things. The saved seat, the shared malt, the careful distance on the walk home that screamed, "I respect you," louder than any shout. They taught us that commitment, that going steady, was a badge of honor, not a burden. It meant you were building something meant to last. Mary Margaret? Well, she's been my steady for 58 years now. Through factory layoffs and raising 3 kids who gave us more gray hair than we ever imagined. Through sickness and health. Through all the noise and rush of the world changing around us. The foundation we built under those old rules, it held. It held because it was built on patience. Learn no waiting for Mrs. Gable to look away, on respect forged facing Mr. O'Shea's gaze, on commitment promised by a simple silver ring, and on communication whispered in notes and practiced on long walks home. We learned to talk. We learned to listen. We learned that love is a verb, not just a spark. So, when the grandkids giggle about chaperones or think going steady sounds like a prison sentence, I just smile. I think of the weight of that first letter jacket, the electric thrill of a note passed under a drugstore counter, the sacred quiet of a walk home under the elms. I think of the deep, enduring strength built not in spite of those old rules, but because of them. They taught us that some things, respect, patience, commitment, true connection, are timeless, worth waiting for, worth building slowly, worth holding on to, steady as a rock, through all the seasons life brings. The world spins faster now, noisier, brighter, but sometimes late on the porch with Mary Margaret, the silence between us holds all the words we ever needed. Just two old steadies, still speaking the quiet language of a time when love arrived slowly, one careful, chaperoned step at a time. What unwritten rules shaped your young love? We'd be honored if you shared your memories below.